The transmission began at exactly 14:32 Greenwich Mean Time on a Tuesday afternoon that would forever change human history. Every television screen flickered to black, every radio crackled with static, and smartphones around the globe buzzed simultaneously with an incoming message that bypassed every security protocol known to mankind. Admiral Vextar of the Hegemony Council materialized on billions of screens worldwide. His towering figure dominated the frame, standing nearly 8 feet tall with blue-scaled skin that shimmered under harsh alien lighting. 4 eyes, arranged in pairs above and below his main visual sensors, glowed with an unsettling amber light. His elongated skull bore intricate markings that seemed to shift and move, while his mouth revealed rows of crystalline teeth that clicked together as he spoke. Primitive species of the third planet, his voice boomed through translation software that somehow understood every human language simultaneously. I am Admiral Vextar, speaking for the Hegemony Council of 12 Worlds. Your kind has spread beyond your pathetic solar system like a plague, disrupting trade routes and threatening the established order that has maintained galactic peace for 3,000 of your years. Behind him, massive warships hung in the void of space, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that pulsed with ominous red energy. Each vessel stretched for miles, dwarfing anything humanity had ever constructed. Strange geometric patterns covered their surfaces, and smaller craft swarmed around them like metallic insects. You have exactly 72 hours to broadcast your unconditional surrender across all frequencies, Vextar continued, his 4 eyes narrowing. Dismantle your pathetic fleet, abandon your colony worlds, and return to your birth planet to await our judgment. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why 4 to 7 species have bowed before hegemony might. The transmission cut to scenes of other worlds, cities of glass and metal reduced to smoking craters, massive creatures that looked like walking mountains fleeing across barren landscapes, and the remnant of space fleets drifting as debris fields around dead planets. In the Pentagon's Strategic Command Center, General Robert Hayes sat surrounded by his top advisors, watching the alien ultimatum on the room's main display. Colonel Patricia Collins, recently promoted to lead the Colonial Defense Initiative, leaned forward in her chair. Major Kevin Thompson from Intelligence tapped rapidly on his tablet, already pulling up fleet deployment schedules. When the transmission ended, the war room fell silent except for the quiet hum of computers and the distant sound of helicopters landing on the Pentagon's roof. Someone's coffee cup clinked against the conference table. Outside, car alarms began wailing as panicked drivers abandoned their vehicles to stare at public screens still displaying the alien message. Hayes looked around the table at faces that should have shown fear or desperation. Instead, he saw something that would have confused Admiral Vextar completely, anticipation mixed with the kind of grim satisfaction soldiers felt when a long-expected enemy finally showed themselves. "Well, gentlemen," Hayes said, cracking his knuckles in a gesture that had become legendary among his staff. "Looks like Christmas came early this year." Collins was already on her secure phone, barking orders to fleet commanders across the solar system. "I want every ship combat ready within 6 hours. Yes, that includes the cargo haulers. Strap whatever weapons we can find to them." The response across Earth was unlike anything the aliens could have predicted. In London, Prime Minister Margaret Webb convened an emergency session of Parliament, but instead of panic, the chamber filled with determined voices calling for immediate military mobilization. Big Ben chimed the hour as IAF pilots sprinted across airfields toward their fighters. In Moscow, President Viktor Petrov activated ancient nuclear bunkers while simultaneously ordering the immediate retrofitting of civilian spacecraft with military hardware. "If they want to fight," he declared to his generals, "we'll give them one they'll remember for the next 3,000 years." But perhaps most remarkable was the reaction in the streets. News crews expected to film terrified crowds fleeing cities or hiding in basements. Instead, they found something extraordinary. Outside recruitment centers, lines formed that stretched for blocks. Military websites crashed as millions tried to enlist simultaneously. Social media exploded not with panic, but with memes mocking the aliens and videos of people practicing with improvised weapons. The phrase "finally, a real challenge" began trending within the first hour. Someone created a remix of the Alien Ultimatum set to heavy metal music. Veterans pulled dusty uniforms from closets and headed to the nearest base. Teenagers lied about their ages to join up. Even elderly citizens demanded to know how they could contribute to the war effort. In Houston, NASA engineers worked through the night, modifying civilian spacecraft into makeshift warships. The International Space Station became a strategic command post. Mining ships in the asteroid belt receive emergency orders to return to Earth orbit, their industrial lasers and cargo manipulators suddenly looking very much like weapons to creative military minds. Dr. Rebecca Foster at CERN proposed using the particle accelerator as a weapon, while her colleague Dr. Andrew Martinez began calculations for turning civilian fusion reactors into improvised bombs. "If they think we're primitive," Martinez muttered, reviewing his equations, "they're about to learn what desperate humans can accomplish with nuclear physics." By midnight, Earth hummed with activity that would have amazed any observer. This wasn't a species preparing to surrender or flee. This was a world preparing for the fight of its life, and somehow, impossibly, looking forward to it. 3 days after the ultimatum expired, the void at the edge of the solar system rippled with unnatural energy. Space itself seemed to tear open as massive hegemony warships emerged from hyperspace, their dark hulls gleaming with alien metal that absorbed starlight. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Asterisk Dominant, watching his fleet of 200 vessels arrange themselves in perfect formation. His tactical display showed the inner solar system laid out before him like a three-dimensional map. He expected to see scattered civilian traffic fleeing toward the outer planets, maybe a few pathetic military vessels trying to mount some hopeless last stand near Mars. Instead, his senses detected something that made his 4 eyes blink in confusion. 2,000 human vessels hung in space between Jupiter and Saturn, arranged in what looked disturbingly like an actual battle formation. "So," reported his tactical officer, a spider-like creature called Zekmoth whose multiple limbs dance across holographic controls. "We're reading approximately 2,000 human vessels. Configuration unknown. They appear to be civilian ships with military modifications." Vextar moved closer to the display, his scale hand tracing the human formation. Mining ships bristled with hastily welded weapon mounts. Passenger liners had been gutted and filled with missile launchers. Even garbage haulers had been converted into makeshift warships, their industrial manipulator arms now carrying plasma cannons. "Pathetic!" Vextar laughed, the sound echoing across his bridge. "They've turned their entire civilian fleet into scrap metal. This will be over in minutes. All ships, begin the attack. Show them the price of defiance." The hegemony fleet surged forward, their weapons charging with a distinctive whine of quantum disruptors. These were weapons that had reduced 47 civilizations to cosmic dust. Energy beams that could slice through planets. Missiles guided by artificial minds that had been perfected over millennia of warfare. But as the first shots fired, something unexpected happened. The human fleet didn't try to match the alien formation flying. Instead, they scattered like a flock of birds, each ship moving independently in patterns that seemed random but somehow coordinated. Captain James Mitchell commanded the New Denver Asterisk, a converted cargo hauler that had once transported grain between Earth and Mars. Now her cargo bays held enough explosives to level a city, and her hull mounted mining lasers that had been overcharged far beyond safety limits. "All right, people." Mitchell's voice crackled over the comm to his volunteer crew of former dock workers and unemployed engineers. "We knew this was a one-way trip when we signed up. Let's make it count." The New Denver Asterisk accelerated directly toward a hegemony cruiser, dodging quantum disruptor beams that turned nearby asteroids into glowing vapor. Behind Mitchell, similar scenes played out across the human fleet. Ships that should have been running freight routes now dove into combat with alien vessels 100 times their size. The Flying Tiger Asterisk, originally a passenger liner, had been stripped down to her hull and packed with nuclear missiles. Captain Helen Rodriguez aimed her ship at the center of the alien formation and fired every weapon at once. The Tiger Asterisk shook apart from the recoil, but her missiles found their targets, turning 3 hegemony destroyers into expanding clouds of wreckage. What confused the aliens most was how the humans fought together. Every ship seemed to know exactly what every other ship was doing, as if they shared some kind of collective mind. When the converted mining vessel Iron Horse lost her weapons, she immediately began broadcasting targeting data for other ships. When the cargo hauler Freedom's Edge took critical damage, 2 passenger ships moved to shield her while she rammed an alien frigate. The battle raged for 6 hours across millions of miles of space. Alien disruptor beams carved through human ships like hot knives through butter, but the humans kept coming. They used debris fields as cover, fired from behind asteroids, and employed tactics that made no sense according to hegemony military doctrine. The Stellar Express Asterisk, a tourist ship that had once carried sightseers to view Saturn's rings, sacrificed herself by ramming directly into an alien battleship's weapon array. Her captain's last transmission was simple: "That's for my daughter's future." Captain James Mitchell found his moment when a hegemony cruiser exposed her engine section while turning to avoid a cluster of human fighters. The New Denver was already heavily damaged. Her hull breached in 12 places and half a crew dead or wounded. "This is Mitchell to all ships," he announced over the open channel. "Tell my wife I kept my promise. No alien setting foot on Earth today." The New Denver accelerated to ramming speed, her overcharged engines pushing her far beyond safe limits. The collision tore both ships apart in a bowl of white-hot plasma that could be seen from Earth's telescopes. When the battle finally ended, Admiral Vextar stared at his casualty reports in stunned disbelief. 4 to 7 hegemony ships destroyed, 19 badly damaged. His fleet had been reduced by nearly a third. The humans had lost almost 800 vessels, but they fought with a coordination and savagery that defied everything he understood about warfare. "Sir," whispered his aide, a nervous creature whose transparent skin revealed a rapid heartbeat, "these humans fight like madmen. They show no regard for their own survival." Vextar's 4 eyes focused on the drifting wreckage where human and alien ships had died together. In 3,000 years of hegemony expansion, no species had ever fought like this. Most civilizations surrendered after losing 10% of their forces. These humans had lost 40% and somehow claimed victory. "No," Vextar corrected grimly, his voice carrying new respect he didn't want to acknowledge. "They don't fight like madmen. They fight like they are not afraid to die. And that makes them the most dangerous enemy we've ever faced." 2 weeks into what the aliens had expected to be a brief conquest, the hegemony faced a nightmare they'd never encountered in 3,000 years of galactic expansion. Humans didn't just fight back against superior technology. They stole it, improved it, and turned it against the creators with terrifying efficiency. Lieutenant Colonel Diana Foster crouched behind the twisted remains of what had once been a Chicago city bus, carefully examining the alien plasma rifle in her hands. The weapon was sleek and organic-looking, with flowing curve that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. Strange symbols flickered along its barrel, and the trigger mechanism responded to thought as much as touch. Just 72 hours earlier, this exact weapon had belonged to a hegemony shock trooper who'd made the fatal mistake of underestimating human ingenuity. Now, after being dissected by MIT engineers working in underground bunkers, 5,000 identical copies were rolling off production lines in factories across North America. Sergeant Kevin Barnes called out, sliding into cover beside her as another wave of alien fighters screamed overhead. "The civilians have finished the evacuation tunnels. Network runs for 15 miles underground, complete with supply depots and communication hubs." Diana nodded, impressed despite the circumstances. When the hegemony had begun their orbital bombardment of major cities, most species would have either surrendered or fled in panic. Humans had gone underground and turned their subway systems into military bases. And Barnes grinned, his face streaked with soot but his eyes bright with determination. "Mrs. Henderson down on 5th Street wants to know if we need more of her apple pies for the troops. She's also asking if anyone knows how to cook that blue alien meat we captured yesterday." Despite everything, the burning buildings, the constant threat of death from above, the fact that humanity was fighting for its very survival, Diana found herself smiling. Even under orbital bombardment that had reduced half of downtown Chicago to rubble, humans found ways to take care of each other. "Tell Mrs. Henderson we'll take all the pies she can make," Diana replied, "and warn her that alien meat might be toxic. We're still running tests." Above them, the sky erupted in brilliant flashes as Captain Thomas Reed's fighter squadron engaged a formation of hegemony dropships. The human pilots flew modified F-35s that had been retrofitted with captured alien shielding and weapon systems. What had started as inferior Earth technology was now becoming something the aliens couldn't predict or counter. "Phoenix Squadron, this is Reed." The captain's voice crackled over the comm system. "Remember what these bastards did to Denver and Detroit. They picked the wrong species to mess with. Let's show them what happens when you threaten human families. Reed's fighter dove toward an alien transport, its new plasma cannons charging with that distinctive alien whine. But instead of the clumsy human tactics the hegemony expected, Reed performed a maneuver that would have been impossible without the captured alien gravity manipulators now installed in his ship. He flipped inverted at 500 miles per hour, fired a burst that crippled the transport's engines, then rolled away before the enemy could respond. The transport crashed into Lake Michigan with a splash that could be seen for miles. 3 more alien ships followed it down as Phoenix Squadron demonstrated the terrifying effectiveness of human creativity combined with superior alien technology. In orbit, Admiral Vextar stood on his bridge reviewing reports that grew more disturbing by the hour. What had begun as a simple planetary conquest was turning into a technological nightmare. The humans weren't just copying hegemony weapons, they were improving them. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously, "we're receiving distress calls from destroyers *crushing Talon * and *void render star. Their report being boarded by human assault teams." Vextar's 4 eyes widened. Boarded? How did primitive spacecraft penetrate our shields? The answer came in the form of grainy video footage from the *crushing Talon's security systems. Human soldiers in modified spacesuits were cutting through bulkheads with handheld plasma torches. But these weren't crude human weapons. They were hegemony boarding tools, somehow acquired and reverse-engineered in a matter of days. The human assault team moved through the alien ship with practiced efficiency, using captured hegemony grenades to clear corridors and commandeered alien scanners to navigate the vessel's layout. Their leader, a scarred woman with colonel's insignia, spoke into her communicator. "Bridge secure. Beginning data download. These aliens are about to regret teaching us their technology." By the time the video feed cut out, the *crushing Talon * was under human control. Her weapon systems, navigation computers, and most importantly, her technology databases were now in human hands. The third captured destroyer, *void render *, had suffered an even more humiliating fate. Human engineers had not only seized the ship, but were already broadcasting modifications to the vessel's design back to Earth. Within hours, human factories would be producing improved versions of hegemony technology. "Sir," Vextar's aide whispered, his voice trembling with something the Admiral had never heard from his species before, genuine fear. "The humans aren't just adapting our technology. They are making it better. Our own weapons are being used against us with greater efficiency than we achieve ourselves." Admiral Vextar stared at the tactical displays showing the chaos unfolding around Earth. Red dots marked disabled hegemony ships. Blue triangles indicated human vessels that should have been destroyed days ago but somehow kept fighting with increasingly sophisticated weapons. The most disturbing part wasn't that humans had learned to copy alien technology. Dozens of species had managed that over the millennia. What made his scaled skin crawl with unease was how quickly they'd mastered it, improved it, and begun using it in ways the original designers had never imagined. These weren't primitive beings cowering before superior technology. They were apex predators who'd just been handed the keys to the galaxy's weapons vault, and they were learning to use those weapons better than their creators ever had. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vextar began to wonder if the hegemony had picked a fight it couldn't win. The siege of Earth lasted 37 days of relentless orbital bombardment and ground battles that turned major cities into war zones. Hegemony forces had expected the human resistance to crumble within a week, but instead found themselves facing an enemy that grew stronger with each passing day. On day 38, Admiral Vextar's flagship, the Dominant, suffered catastrophic damage during a human counterattack. A modified cargo vessel called the Brooklyn's Pride had somehow penetrated his fleet's defensive screen using captured hegemony cloaking technology. The suicide run that followed destroyed both ships, sending wreckage raining down over the ruins of what had once been Manhattan. Vextar regained consciousness in what his senses told him was a human medical facility, though nothing about it matched his understanding of primitive Earth medicine. The room hummed with advanced equipment that looked suspiciously like modified hegemony medical scanners. Soft lighting emanated from panels that bore the distinctive energy signatures of alien technology, yet the overall design felt unmistakably human. Dr. Rebecca Mitchell stood beside his bed, carefully examining readings from a medical device that had clearly been reverse-engineered from hegemony biotechnology. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she adjusted his foredrip, the same steady care she'd shown the human soldiers in nearby beds. "Why?" Vextar asked, his voice weak but filled with genuine confusion. "We are at war. Your people are dying because of my orders." Dr. Mitchell looked up from her charts, her tired eyes meeting his four alien ones without fear or hatred. "Because you're hurt," she replied simply, as if the answer should be obvious. "That's what we do." Through the hospital windows, Vextar witnessed something that challenged every assumption the hegemony had made about human nature. In the courtyard below, human medics worked alongside captured hegemony soldiers, teaching them to treat wounded humans with the same alien medical technology that had been used against Earth just days earlier. But what truly confounded him was a broader scene unfolding across the medical complex. Children, some no older than 10 human years, moved through the facility carrying messages between different sections. They showed no fear of the alien patients, often stopping to offer water or food to wounded hegemony soldiers who looked nothing like any creature in their experience. An elderly human male, his hair white with age, sat at a computer terminal painstakingly translating hegemony communications protocols. Beside him, a woman who couldn't have been much younger worked to decode alien tactical frequencies. These weren't military personnel. They were civilians who had volunteered to help despite having no formal training. Most bizarrely, domestic animals roamed the facility freely. Dogs had been trained to detect the unique scent signatures of different alien species, alerting security to potential infiltrators. Cats, with their superior night vision, served as living motion detectors in darkened corridors. Even a parrot named Colonel Biscuit had learned to mimic hegemony distress calls, confusing enemy rescue attempts. The sound of approaching footsteps made Vextar turn his head. General Robert Hayes entered the room, his uniform bearing the scars of recent combat, but his demeanor surprisingly relaxed. He carried 2 cups of what smelled like human coffee and offered one to Dr. Mitchell. "Admiral," Hayes said conversationally, settling into a chair beside the bed. "Your people fight well. I'll give you that. We've lost good soldiers to your tactics." Vextar expected interrogation, demand for intelligence, or threats of retaliation. Instead, Hayes seemed genuinely interested in conversation. "But you made one fundamental mistake," Hayes continued, sipping his coffee. "You studied our technology, our military capabilities, even our history of warfare. But you never tried to understand what we actually are." "Explain," Vextar demanded, though his tone carried more curiosity than anger. Hayes gestured toward the window, where the remarkable scene continued to unfold. A group of human children were now playing some kind of game with young hegemony prisoners, their different anatomies making the rules hilariously complicated but somehow workable. "You assumed we were individuals fighting for territory or resources, like most species you've conquered," Hayes said. "But that's not what humans are. We're a pack species. And when you threaten our pack, something interesting happens." On cue, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Through the windows, they could see human fighters engaging hegemony rescue ships attempting to retrieve their crashed personnel. But instead of hiding the alien prisoners or using them as shields, the humans immediately began evacuating both human and alien patients to underground shelters. "We don't just fight back," Hayes continued, watching human soldiers risk their lives to carry wounded hegemony troopers to safety. "We adopt the wounded, protect the innocent, and somehow manage to turn enemies into family. Watch." Dr. Mitchell was now working frantically to stabilize a hegemony soldier who'd been injured in the rescue attempt. Around her, human nurses followed her orders without question, treating the alien patient with the same urgency they'd show their own species. "This makes no strategic sense," Vextar protested, his military mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. "You're wasting resources on enemy combatants." "No," Hayes replied, his voice carrying a certainty that sent chills through Vextar's scaled skin. "It makes human sense. See, Admiral, you thought you were fighting a military, but you actually declared war on a family. And families don't just protect their own, they grow. Every person you try to destroy, every world you threaten, becomes part of our pack." Outside, The battle raged on, but Vextar noticed something that made his full eyes widen in disbelief. Human communications were now being relayed through hegemony prisoners who had volunteered to help coordinate the defense. Former enemies were actively participating in the protection of the facility that housed them. "Your own soldiers are helping us," Hayes observed quietly, "because we showed them something their empire never did, that they matter as individuals, not just as weapons." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vextar began to understand why the hegemony was losing this war. They weren't fighting a civilization. They were fighting something far more dangerous. They were fighting a species that could turn conquest into adoption and enemies into allies, simply by being themselves. The war ended not with surrender, but with understanding that would reshape the galaxy forever. Admiral Vextar stood in the ruins of the United Nations building, his four eyes taking in the strange sight around him. Human construction crews worked alongside hegemony engineers, their different anatomies creating an odd but effective partnership. Where human workers couldn't reach, spider-like hegemony technicians climbed with ease. Where alien technology proved too complex, human engineers found creative shortcuts that somehow made everything work better. The makeshift negotiating table had been assembled from debris. Part of it came from a destroyed hegemony transport, the rest from what had once been the Secretary General's desk. Ambassador Linda Carter sat across from him, her hands folded calmly despite the fact that parts of New York still smoldered in the distance. "The Hegemony Council offers these terms." Vextar began, activating a holographic display that listed the standard conquest protocols used for 4 to 7 other species. Complete human withdrawal from all colonized worlds, restriction to your home system, tribute payments of raw materials, and... He stopped because a human woman was smiling. Not the desperate smile of someone trying to hide fear, or the bitter smile of someone accepting defeat. This was something else entirely, the kind of smile a teacher might give a student who was about to learn something important. "Admiral," Linda said gently, her voice carrying none of the anger or resentment he expected. "You're still thinking like this is about winning and losing. We have a better idea." She slid a datapad across the improvised table. The device had been modified to display information in hegemony script, showing the same kind of technological cooperation happening throughout the building. Vextar's eyes moved across the text, his expression shifting from confusion to stunned disbelief. The humans weren't demanding reparation for their destroyed cities. They weren't insisting on territorial concessions or revenge for their military casualties. Instead, they proposed something that challenged everything the hegemony understood about post-war negotiations. Joint task force, combined fleet operations, shared technology development, and most impossibly, a unified response to intelligence reports about something emerging from the galaxy's outer rim, a threat that made both human and hegemony space vulnerable. "You want alliance?" Vextar asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "After everything we've done to your people." "We want survival," Linda replied, her tone matter-of-fact. "Yours and ours. Because we've learned something about you people during this war. You're not evil conquerors. You're scared survivors doing what you think you have to do. And that means you're worth saving." She activated another section of the datapad, showing long-range sensor readings that made Vextar's scaled skin crawl. Dark shapes moving in the space between galaxies. Energy signatures that didn't match any known technology. Entire star systems going silent without explanation. "The Devourer swarm," Vextar whispered, recognizing references from ancient hegemony archives. "But those are myths, stories told to frighten younglings." "Maybe," Linda agreed, "but 3 of your outer colonies have gone dark in the past year. Our deep space monitoring stations are picking up signals that suggest something big is coming. Something that doesn't care about the difference between humans and hegemony species." Through the broken windows, they could hear the sounds of reconstruction. Human children were teaching hegemony younglings how to play soccer, while alien engineers showed human mechanics how to repair gravitational field generators. Former enemies were becoming neighbors with a speed that defied all historical precedent. "We could fight this thing separately and probably both lose," Linda continued. "Or we could combine our strengths and maybe find a way to protect everyone. Your military discipline and our adaptability. Your advanced technology and our creative chaos. Your 3,000 years of experience and our refusal to accept impossible odds." 6 months later, the first joint human hegemony fleet departed Earth orbit in a ceremony broadcast across both civilizations. Admiral Patricia Collins shared command with Admiral Vextar from a bridge of the newly constructed Unity, a vessel that incorporated the best of both species' technologies. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperation. Human creativity had found ways to make hegemony shield generators 30% more efficient. Alien metallurgy had produced hull materials that were lighter and stronger than anything either species had achieved alone. The crew quarters had been designed to accommodate both human privacy needs and hegemony communal preferences. Fleet status report. Collins requested as a massive formation of ships prepared to jump to hyperspace. All vessels reporting ready, came the reply from Lieutenant Commander Kevin Thompson, now serving as Joint Operations Coordinator. Human vessels, 57 ships including modified civilian craft. Hegemony vessels, 38 ships including 3 dreadnoughts. Mixed crews on all vessels. On the main display, Earth fell away behind them as a fleet oriented toward the galactic rim where ancient sensors had detected something that defied explanation. The sight was breathtaking. Human ships flying in formation with vessels that had been their enemies just months earlier, their different design philosophies somehow creating a more beautiful whole. "You know," Vextar said quietly to Collins as they watched the stars shift into hyperspace, "my people have conquered 4 to 7 civilizations. We've seen species that were stronger, faster, more numerous, or more technologically advanced than humans. But," Collins prompted, "but we've never encountered a species that could turn enemies into family just by being themselves. Your people don't just survive impossible odds, you transform them into opportunities." As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading toward unknown dangers in the galactic dark, one truth became clear. Humanity had done what they always did when faced with overwhelming challenges. They'd found a way to turn an impossible situation into an opportunity, enemies into allies, and fear into hope. The universe was about to discover what happened when humans stopped fighting for survival and started fighting for everyone. And whatever was waiting in the darkness between galaxies was about to learn why the rest of the galaxy had learned to both fear and love the strange species from the third planet. The real war was just beginning, but this time, humanity wouldn't be fighting alone.